What's up, y'all? It's Nas MMA here with another video, and in today's video we got a banger. So we're talking about different UFC fights that fans call robberies and whether they actually are or not. And I really wanted to make this video because I've been seeing certain talk about some of these fights, and it really grinds my gears when I see a fighter that rightfully won a fight, yet everyone discredits them by saying they were robbed or that they robbed the other guy. So yeah, some of these really need to be talked about. And the first one is O'Malley versus Gane. Now, everyone and their mom pretty much thinks that Gane won this fight. There's a couple people that I see out there saying that O'Malley won, but I'm one of them. I really do think that O'Malley won this fight. I've rewatched it plenty of times, and every time that I've watched it, I've said, all right, I think O'Malley won, but let me watch this again and see if maybe I was scored for Gane this time. And I just haven't. I think that O'Malley clearly outlanded Gane in the first and the third round. He did lose that second round, I will give you that. It wasn't a 30-27 O'Malley, but in that first and third round, O'Malley clearly outstruck Gane and outlanded him. And I know some people will argue that because of the takedowns in the third round, he won those rounds, as in Gane, but I really don't see that. He did get a takedown or two, but it didn't lead to enough damage to mitigate the difference in strikes landed on the feet for O'Malley. I just think that O'Malley just got too far ahead for Gane to catch up with the takedown, O'Malley rocked him hard in that third round, and Gane was shooting for his life. I don't think that Gane won this fight. I mean, it wasn't a bad performance from Gane, and I really think that people score this fight like based off vibes, and not that it wasn't super close. It was a very close fight, but I do think that O'Malley won. But I think that because it's Petr Yan and he's a fan favorite, everyone loves Gane. We all wish he was champ. We all wish that he beat Aljo. I mean, he should have won that first fight against Aljo, and yeah, we love Gane, and we don't like O'Malley really at the time. I mean, if you look at him, he doesn't look like a champ. He doesn't look like a UFC fighter. He's super overrated when it comes to his ability on the mic. He's kind of, you'd think he'd be more exciting than he is, but he's just kind of boring when you hear him at press conferences. So I mean, these guys are just polar opposites in terms of what the fans think of them at the time, that is. But yeah, I think that O'Malley won this fight. So it's enough said with that one. Next fight, though, is a robbery, a brutal one, and it would be Jones versus Reyes. Now, I don't see many people saying that Jones won this fight, so I don't think this is exactly a hot take, but there are Jones warriors out there that just cannot for the life of them admit that Jon Jones has had any wrongdoing or any down moments in his career. But if you watch this fight, you cannot tell me with a straight face that Dominic Reyes did not clearly outstrike and stuff takedowns in those first three rounds. And I mean, Dana White thought so in the post-fight press conference right after. 90% of the fan base thinks so, and I'm one of them. It was just such a clear Reyes decision, and yeah, Jon Jones might be one of the only fighters in the UFC that can win a fight just because of his name, genuinely. Like, if it was any other run-of-the-mill champion, I do think they would have given the contender that not that many people know of or care about in Reyes. Say if it was Jan Blachowicz as champ, and Reyes had that performance against Jan Blachowicz, you think they're giving Jan Blachowicz the win? No. But they did give it to John because he's John, and they want to preserve his legacy. But real ones know who really won that fight, and you clearly haven't rewatched it if you think otherwise. I mean, there's just no argument. But yeah, we don't really have to spend that much time on that one. That was just obvious. Next fight though, DDP versus Sean Strickland 1. Now, I think people now are starting to come around to it being a good decision, and most people just don't even like Strickland anymore after the Paulo Costa snooze fest. But I think that DDP won this fight, and I mean, it's pretty split, I'd say. Now that I think about it, a lot of people do think Strickland won. It wasn't a split though at the start. Like, pretty much 80% of the fan base, it seemed, thought Strickland won. But I always thought DDP won. I think that Strickland, if you rewatch the fight, it's so clear which rounds were the rightful rounds. Strickland clearly won the first round and the last round. There's not really any debate. DDP really struggled to get past the jab in that round, and he was getting jabbed up. You saw DDP's face after the fight, after that fifth round. He got beat up in those rounds, but DDP landed on Strickland in those middle rounds like no other fighter has. Watch Izzy fight Strickland. Watch Costa. I mean, not that Costa is a very high level, but Izzy is not landing on him like that. We usually talk about Izzy as one of the best strikers of all time. So, I mean, DDP had a ton of success in that fight, and Strickland couldn't really handle that pressure that well. And I mean, they're like such hard matches for each other on the feet. DDP struggles sort of with a guy like that who is so usually like defensively sound and who has a really good jab and can keep DDP at bay with his heavy pressure style. But Strickland kind of wants you to be a little reserved, like an Izzy, who he wants you to be low output. He wants to put pressure on you and slowly walk you down with amazing defense and throwing out that jab, that teep. And DDP is super hard to do that on. DDP, you're not going to walk towards him on the feet without just meeting. Like, he's like a tractor. He's like a bus. He'll just mow you down, and that's exactly what he did. He stood his ground in the middle of the octagon and did not let Strickland put that pressure on him. So DDP had a lot of success in that third and fourth round, clearly won those rounds. And then the second, it was super even on the feet. And I would say DDP slightly outlanded him, and he also landed a takedown, which, to be fair, Strickland popped right back up from. But what you have to say about that is, as opposed to the Jan fight, where Jan doesn't win a round based off a takedown when he didn't really get much damage off of it because he was losing on the feet. In this case, where DDP did do very well and slightly outstrike Strickland on the feet and get a takedown, that is where you can argue that that takedown actually helps DDP win that round. So, yeah, I do think this was obviously it was an extremely close fight, but I think this was a 47-46 Strickland. But I don't think this is one of those fights where there's no argument for Strickland winning. You could give it to Strickland, but I do think that second round has to go to DDP. But if Strickland was given the decision, I wouldn't be, throwing a fit about it, because, it was such a close fight. It could have been a draw. So, yeah. But this next fight was not a draw. It was a clear win for the man who didn't actually get the win. They robbed him of the belt. Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker 2, the rematch. This fight was not an easy one, and I don't think enough people talk about it. In the first round, Izzy drops Robert Whittaker bad, wins that round easily, obviously. And for the rest of the fight, it seems as if the commentators and the judges think that because of a knockdown in the first round, he is somehow winning the rest of this fight, even though that's not actually how a fight works. But in the second, I think, Izzy won the third round, in my opinion, but in the second, the fourth, and the fifth, Robert Whittaker is popping Israel Adesanya's head off with that step-in jab, that karate blitz jab that he loves to throw. He threw that thing, I don't know how many times in this fight, but Izzy could not stop it. Kind of showing Israel Adesanya's lackluster boxing defense and boxing output on the feet as well. A lot of people have said this, but if Israel Adesanya doesn't put you out early, he can sort of slow down and start to coast the rest of the fight. And it was true in this case, in this fight, as well as a lot of other fights, but I have to give him credit. He did not do that against Dricus, and he showed up and he showed out in that fight despite losing. That was an incredible performance in his last fight, so credit to him. But in this fight, and as well as a lot of other fights, Adesanya is super low output, and it cost him. It cost him big time in this fight because Whittaker wasn't exactly extremely impressive either in this fight. I wouldn't say it was a great performance. He did, credit to him, outland Izzy, but it's not hard to do that when Izzy's throwing like 5 strikes a round in those rounds where he's losing. But yeah, it's clear as day. I don't think you can say that Izzy won those rounds. Robert outlanded him. So yeah, I thought this was a 47-46 Robert, and I don't really think you can argue that Adesanya won it. So yeah. And that was not the only time that Adesanya has robbed someone in a title fight. I think you guys know exactly what fight I'm referring to, but Israel Adesanya versus Big Yoel Romero. This fight, I just rewatched it, and I gotta say, it sucked. It sucked bad. It was a horrible fight to watch. Probably the worst fight that I've ever seen, ever, in the UFC. But not only was it the worst fight I've ever seen, but they didn't even score it right. Yoel clearly won the first round. He clearly won the second round. And I gave him the 5th round as well. So I just gotta say, first off, not an impressive performance by either man. Adesanya, way too low output. Yoel Romero is literally like a turret. He just stands in the middle of the octagon doing nothing for like half of a round. And yet you're not throwing? Izzy probably could have landed like 50 leg kicks a round and like 50 jabs a round, and Yoel would have just stood there and took it. Yet he was just so timid, and I get it, it's Yoel, but man, he could have really put a stamp on this one, and he could have easily won the fight just by trying a little harder. And I get he would open himself up, but if the judges were judging correctly, he wouldn't have won if he hadn't have done that. So in order to win the fight, he needed to do that, and he didn't do it, and he lost. And as for Yoel, I don't know why he fights like he just. I know he tries to conserve his energy, and he's getting older, but dude, if Yoel had the same fight style as a Dricus, he would probably finish every man he ever fought. He's so freaking powerful. It's crazy. He probably could have put Izzy's lights out in the first round if he just ran at this guy and said, fuck it, I'm going to knock this guy out, or he's knocking me out. If he fought like Korean Zombie did against Max in that last round that they had, dude, he would probably have gotten Izzy out of there. So, really lackluster from both guys. But in the first round, Yoel lands the better shot. I mean, literally, I think both of them landed less than 3 strikes. But the difference is that Izzy landed 3 lackluster low kicks, whereas Yoel landed like 2 overhand bombs that sent Izzy flying across the octagon and running away. And same in the second round. Literally the exact same story. Less than 5 strikes landed for each guy, but Yoel's landing the better shots, so he wins that round based off damage. And in the third and the fourth, Izzy does start to chop down Yoel's legs, and Yoel doesn't really do much about it. So I'm not going to lie, Izzy did win the third and the fourth round. Yoel landed a big shot here and there, but I can't, to a certain extent, I can't give you a round when you're landing 1 overhand and your opponent lands like 30 low kicks. Despite if it's the more damaging shot, I mean, you have to throw more. So I have to give those rounds to Yoel, or to Izzy. But in the fifth, Yoel had like a barrage of like 20 strikes on the fence after rocking Izzy. And then Izzy runs away and doesn't land more than Yoel. I think the strikes were probably pretty damn even, yet Yoel obviously had the way more damaging and impactful shots. I do think that Yoel clearly won that round. He landed more and landed better shots. It was a 47-46 Yoel, and not an impressive performance at all, like I said, but he still won. And imagine if he'd won the belt. I mean, they probably would have, I don't know, I guess he would have defended it. Who knows? I mean, he was old. Maybe he just retires, or, I guess Yoel he wouldn't retire. I guess that's not him, but I guess they'd do a rematch, but who would have even wanted to see that, dude? Because that fight was awful. So I don't know what would have happened. Maybe it was better that Izzy won anyway. But yeah, he didn't actually win the fight. So yeah. This next one is one of the ones that I wanted to talk about the most, because every time I see a post about it, people swear on their soul that Volk won over Islam in the first fight, and I just do not see it. Now, I think the logical fan base out there, like people who actually watch the sport, do think that Islam won, and he did, by the way, if you didn't know. But there are still too many Volk fans out there that really swear that he won. And it's crazy. I don't think there's an argument. Best case scenario, it was a 47-46 Islam. But I think it was 49-48. But yet there's people that give him 3-4 rounds. Volk? Are you kidding me? Islam undoubtedly won the first 3 rounds. The third round was close, but I do think he outlanded Volk and landed the better shots. And in the fourth, I don't see how you can give Volk that round. I mean, first off, this is arguing for 49-48 or 47-6. 47-46 Islam. Like, he'd already won the fight after the first 3 rounds, but just to put a stamp on it, in the fourth round, you cannot argue that Volk won it. How does he win a round by celebrating while someone has your back? Like, I get he's landing little tiny, pillow punches on Islam's face, but I mean, Islam has his back for like half of the round, and in the beginning of the round, let's not forget, he did outland Volk on the feet before leading to that moment. But just because you're, dancing around and yelling while someone has your back doesn't mean we're going to give you that round because you're, hype and dancing around. Like, I get that it was a big aura moment. Like, I'm not scared with this guy on my feet, but nonetheless, he has your back and you can't get out. And he had it for like a minute or two after outlanding you on the feet. So, yeah, I mean, he didn't win that round. And obviously, it was a valiant comeback in that 5th round where Volk rocks him and beats the fuck out of him on, with ground and pound. And he showed he's a true champ. And listen, I love Volk. I wish he won that fight, but he didn't. But it's because of, not that many people like the Dagestans, although people are coming around to him these days, but especially back then, not that many people like the Dagestanis. Volk is a fan favorite, and especially how he ended the fight with, the hype moment in the fourth, although he still lost that round. And then, dropping Islam and clearly beating him up in that fifth round led to people really thinking that he won the fight. But, just rewatch it and just take the unbiased glasses off and just score the fight for what it was. And yeah, Islam won, clearly. But this next one is a robbery, and I think most people would agree it's a robbery. And it's Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. This was a brutal one. I just rewatched it, and I don't think you can argue that Pimblett won at all. The first round and the third round are just so clearly Jared Gordon. And Patty did win the second round, so fair enough. You won one of the rounds, but that's Jared Gordon, first of all. So, I mean, I get he just had a crazy performance against Bobby Green. So this kind of didn't even matter because he kind of showed that, he can be ranked. But he lost this fight against Jared Gordon, and it's a bad look. He got outlanded in the first round badly. I mean, not badly. He was in there, but I mean, I don't know how many times Gordon landed that step in lead left hook, but like 10 times at least in that first round. Landed it a bunch in the second as well, even though he still lost the round. But it's like, he did land the more damaging shots, and he just landed more shots in general. He won that first round. Patty started to up the output in the second, landed, I think, a head kick, maybe started throwing a lot more body kicks, and was letting the hands go. He did outland Gordon. I would have given him that round. But the third round is really what gets me, because I don't think anyone argues that Pimblett won, but somehow the judges thought he won. How could he have won that round? They must have thought he won the first and the second, which is ridiculous, but I really hope no one gave him the third round because, I mean, not much happened. Gordon clinched him for like 4 minutes. He literally held clinch against the fence. It was literally like Shavkat versus Gary, where the first 4 minutes he just holds Jared Gordon holds Pimblett against the fence for like 4 minutes. And then at the end of the round, Pimblett gets out of it and like jumps on Gordon's back, but doesn't lock any submission up. Or there was like 0 strikes landed on either side. So, I mean, if a guy clinches you against the fence and you can't break out and land any shots, I mean, he technically wins that round. I'm not saying it's an impressive round for Gordon, but how could Pimblett have won that? I mean, yeah, it was just clearly a Gordon fight. And the judges got that one wrong badly. And then, yeah, Patty Pimblett had that whole performance of the night thing where he said, fight of the night at the end of the fight. And that was just an awful look. And yeah, this is kind of where he became, one of the most hated fighters in the UFC. But people are coming around to him now after the UFC 304 performance against Bobby Green. But yeah, this was a clear robbery. Now this next one, not talked about as much as it should be, and it kind of just gets brushed aside, but Movsar Evloev, the man that some people seem to think could beat Ilya, lost to Arnold Allen. And I don't think there's an argument for Movsar winning this fight. So Allen clearly outlands Movsar on the feet and I think he stuffed 1 or 2 takedowns as well in the first round. Clearly wins that round. Now, don't get me wrong, he gets the shit beat out of him in the second, gets taken down and gets cut like very badly. It's a horrible cut in the second. And he clearly loses that round, but then I hear in the commentary in the third round, somehow they are saying that Allen's behind, he needs a finish because he got cut. Are you kidding me? So a cut that you get in a previous round now somehow makes it to where you need a finish, as if a cut is like a knockout, or like how does that change what happened in the first round is what I'm trying to say. Like, Arnold Allen wins the first round, it's a 10-9. Movsar wins the second round, it's a 10-9. It's 19-19 going into the third. So how does the cut give him an advantage in this third round? This is a new round. New strikes are landed. New takedowns are landed. This is what happened in the first and the second. Don't matter right now. Those rounds are over. The men who won those rounds, and now this is a new one. And I just think that the judges sort of had that in their minds, and that sort of influenced their scoring of this round. But I don't see it. I don't see how Movsar won this last round. I think it went exactly like the first, where Arnold Allen's keeping Movsar at range with his kicks and his jabs, and Arnold Allen's a great striker. He's kind of underrated at this point on the feet. He's a great kicker, one of the best in that division. I mean, you could argue he's like a top 5 striker at least at featherweight right now, even though he's ranked outside of the top 5, I'm pretty sure. But he won this fight. He stuffed the takedowns and outlanded Movsar in the first and the third. And despite how badly he lost the second, I don't think that influences how that third round went, if you get what I'm saying. But this next fight was a robbery, but unlike the Movsar and Allen fight, where it's not really talked about at all, Volkov versus Gane 2. Now, this was on the last pay-per-view, UFC 310, Las Vegas, I believe, December 7th last year. And everyone knows this was a robbery. And it was a robbery. They're not wrong. I mean, Dana White thought this was a robbery. Volkov, obviously thought it was a robbery. Cyril Gane thought it was a robbery. Every fan thought it was a robbery. I don't think that Gane won a single round in this fight. And that's actually the worst robbery on this list so far, because every man who got a robbery genuinely did have a close fight, but this was not really that close of a fight. I mean, Volkov wasn't like Holloway Cater, but I do think that he so clearly got a 30-27. The only round that you could argue that Gane won, or the only round that was really that close, was the second. But Volkov still, I believe, won that round. And yeah, Volkov just looked super crisp and had a high output on the feet and outlanded Cyril Gane, the guy who's supposed to be the best tit for tat output guy on the feet in the heavyweight division. The guy who, if he fought Tom Aspinall, maybe could keep him on the outside for 5 rounds. I don't think anyone thought that, but people said that, what was Tom's hardest test on the feet before the 309 and 310? People were saying Cyril Gane, even though at this point, John Jones is definitely the hardest striker for Tom in this division. But Volkov is probably the third best guy up there. I mean, he did outstrike Gane in this fight, and he clearly won it. And I actually have not seen a single person, like in the world, on the internet, in person, ever say that Gane won this fight. And Gane literally walked out of the octagon after the fight because I think he knew he lost, and he didn't want to do the interview because he knew that fans would probably start throwing shit into the cage, or that fans would start booing him. Now, they didn't throw anything, but they sure were booing him. And I don't really like the booing, because I don't know if they're booing him, but if they're booing someone, it should be the judges. The judges definitely should lose their jobs after that if they scored that fight for Gane, which I think she did. I think she lost her license or something. I hope so, because she clearly has no idea how to score an MMA fight. But yeah. Now, last fight on the list, and one of the most important, probably the most important fight on this list, because this man is fighting later this week, and it's Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira. Now, way too many people think Charles won this fight, and I don't see how. what it is that people score these rounds based off submission attempts, which is just outrageous. You cannot score a fight. You cannot score a man around after they've lost it. After they got beat up on the feet, Charles threw like barely any strikes other than maybe a couple body kicks and like a jab every minute. I mean, this was Charles' worst performance on the feet in his prime that we've ever seen. And he got beat up on the ground. Like, Tsarukyan landed horrifying elbows on the face of Oliveira and cut him bad. And the first and the third round, the second round was clearly a Tsarukyan win. I don't think people would even debate that. But people give Charles the first and the third because he got a close submission attempt. Like, is that how we're scoring fights now? We're giving guys rounds based off a submission attempt, a failed one at that. Like, I get that it was hype. Like, he almost got the ghillie. I think it was a guillotine in the last round, the third round, and the buzzer went off. But does that give him a round now because he got a submission attempt that didn't, he didn't get it in time? I mean, first off, this fight definitely should have been 5 rounds because the longer this fight went on, I think Charles could have gotten a finish in the 4th or the 5th. So, kind of sucks to see that. But honestly, Charles just did horribly in this fight, and he did not deserve to win this fight at all. I thought it was a 30-27, and somehow the fans were outraged at this one. Not a lot of them. I think people are coming around, but I mean, if you saw the internet the night of this fight, if you checked Instagram after the fight, literally most of the comment section was, calling robbery. And obviously it's because it's Charles. Like, we all love Charles. I love Charles. He's easily one of my 3 favorite fighters in the UFC's history. But I gotta be honest, this was just a really bad performance from him. And if they ever fight again, I'm not going to be that excited because I do think Arman is just a horrible matchup. And I think Arman will always beat Charles. But that is the last fight, and we're going to wrap this video up. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun watching all these fights again, and I had a lot of fun giving you guys my opinion on them. And I hope you guys are ready for UFC 311. I know I am. I've never been, honestly, this hype for a event in some time. Probably since Ilya, which wasn't that long ago. But it's every like 4 months at this point there's a card like this. So shout out to the UFC. They're actually doing pretty well these days. And I've seen so many really good fight nights that are being booked recently. So I think this is going to be a great year for the UFC. So, yeah, I will see you guys later.